Hello, this is Montessa Young, your instructional designer. Sorry you weren't able to be at our syllabus training last night, but I wanted to walk through our agenda and talk to you about some of the items that we found important with the faculty last night. So first of all, the purpose of this training is just to improve your syllabus and give your students a better educational outcome and hopefully relieve a little stress and confusion on your part. Okay, so we're just going to kind of walk down through this list, and the full training was an hour long. I'm going to try to keep this a little bit shorter. So instructor information. Let's start at the very top. First of all, your name. What do you want to be called? If it upsets you when someone says, hey you, or miss, or George, instead of your full name, whether you want to be called Professor Young or Mrs. Young, this is a good time to put that in your syllabus. Just signal to your students. Your contact information, so where your office is, what your phone number is, what your email is. We talked about using Google Voice for adjuncts since you don't have an office phone. It's an awesome program. It'll give you a local number, and then you receive all of your voicemails as text or as email messages. And you can also turn off when it does and does not ring. So I used to use this when I taught online. I wouldn't let the phone ring after about 8:30 p.m. and then not till 7 in the morning. So that's a way to give your students access to you as an adjunct without having to worry about calls at all nights and evenings. Then the next part in instructor information is who are you? And this gives you the chance to highlight your education and your work experience, what classes you've taught, and then really show your passion for your subject. So just a paragraph or two can really help students say, hey, you know, I've got a really qualified instructor that really wants to be here. Okay, so now we'll get into course information. So if you're faculty, you have access to the course masters on the TVCC Drive. If you're an adjunct, you can ask your department head to access these for you if you've not seen your course master. And what this is, just a page that says, you know, here's how many credits the class is, here's the outcomes and objectives that we expect the students to learn in that class. We have found a few course masters that are outdated or not reflecting on what we're currently teaching, and our hope is to get those updated. But your course objectives and outcomes should closely match your course master. Then your course description, you can put in the catalog description, or you can add a few more sentences to that. If there's any course prerequisites, that gives the students a chance. Maybe they went through revising wrong, or they didn't realize they needed this class, another class before they took yours, to just get those prerequisites in. That's a nice thing to have on the syllabus. Once again, course objectives and outcomes based on your course master. Course materials, we had a good discussion about this. There's a lot of different ways to get textbooks. Of course, our bookstore is the #1 way, but we think it's good to be clear with the students what version you will accept. So if you accept you know, the 13th version and the 12th edition, they might be able to save a little money having that older edition. If you provide the ISBN number, that allows them to search online for the book. If it's available digitally. Now, if you want them to bring the textbook to class and you don't allow cell phones and laptops in your course, then buying a digital textbook may not be the best choice for that student. So being clear about that up front. And then if the digital textbook is just fine and it's half the price, all the better, right? Access code. So if you're using textbook resources like WebAssign, students will get in that class and WebAssign gives you 2 weeks and they're working along for 2 weeks and like, oh, I really do need this access code. And then sometimes they've got to come up with the money with it because they hadn't planned ahead. And so then for 2 weeks they do no work until they get the access code again. So I think having that discussion up front is really good. It's like, you will need this access code and you probably should go ahead and get it. And then in these supplementary materials that you're going to require, if you have things that are available at the library that have been put on hold, other items like that. Rationale for your course. So how will the content benefit the students? So this gives you the chance to kind of advertise, here's why you need to be here. What will they be able to do that they couldn't do before by taking your class? And I think that's really important, especially at the community college, our young students. Is this course really required for them to go out in the workforce and do what they need to do, or is it really required before they can move up to the next level in the subject? So just being clear about that. And then maybe explain why you organized the course the way you did. Why are the assessments spaced the way they are? Why are you doing the reading in the lab? So just kind of explain your logic behind all that. And sometimes that helps them see the bigger picture of what they'll be learning. Course requirements. We had a good discussion about alignment, that your instruction fits your activities, and then that's what shows up on your assessment, the test. So often we'll find our favorite part of a subject and kind of go off of the course outcomes a little bit and spend a ton of time. Notice in elementary school, all the science teachers really like dinosaurs because the kids like dinosaurs. So we spent all this time on dinosaurs. And then you got to the science test, and maybe it was over all reptiles or all animal species. And you're like, well, all we studied was dinosaurs, but this test has this broader thing. And I think sometimes in college students run into that too, that we focus in class and stuff on this, but then don't change our exams to match our focus. Be really clear about the time required. A lot of these are coming right out of high school or haven't been to school for a long time, just to tell them that, you're sitting in the seats for an hour today for the class, but I expect an additional hour of study time or homework time. And I think that's kind to be up front. So, before that no refund date, if you say this class is going to take 20 hours a week, that they can say, oh, maybe this is not the best choice for my schedule, and be able to work with that. And maybe highlight your major projects in the class. If you have a project that lasts 4 or 5 weeks and going to be a huge part of their grade, maybe give an upfront explanation about all those requirements. So once again, they can say, okay, I'm ready to take that on, or, ooh, I don't know if I'm ready to do that or not. Next up is grading. So you should provide a grading scale for your letter grades, whether you're going to use a point or percentage system. If you do weighted grades, and then what percentage for each category of that. Academic honesty. We've run into a few situations of students turning in plagiarized paper, sometimes to the point of you can put in the first sentence and find the whole web page and the whole picture in the background there. And we talked about that if you tell them that you're going to use Turnitin, which is our plagiarism checker thing, that's sometimes enough to discourage that behavior. So I think about talking about a policy around academic honesty if you are going to use software. And then what happens if you catch a severe case of plagiarism? Do they just fail that assignment? Do they fail the course? Are they allowed to withdraw from your class? Are you going to report it to the college? So I think being really upfront about your expectations for academic honesty. The next is the type of feedback they will receive and how long until they receive it. So in our instant world, if I turn in an 8-page essay, I would like to know what my grade is tomorrow, and that's sometimes not not possible with logistics. So I think saying, you're going to receive great feedback on this paper, I'm going to take my pen out and write all over it, but you're not going to get it back for 2 weeks because I am giving you that detailed feedback. And once again, if you're upfront about this is how this process is going to work, hopefully it'll save you all of those panicked emails of, why haven't I gotten it graded yet? Maybe be clear on anything that you do for just practice and not graded. And sometimes we kind of keep this quiet because we still want them to do the practice because it's really important, but we don't want to bother with grading it. But I think you need to be clear, like, well, you'll have students that'll work really hard on all the practice work and then won't actually do the things very well that need to be graded. So, some hint there of, really focus on these assignments, and these assignments are not as important because I'm not grading them. How do they access their grade? So if you're an online class and you're using Canvas, then they can pop up that grades area anytime they want. But if you're not using Canvas, then how should they ask you for their grade? How often should they ask you? Maybe make it clear that you don't raise your hand in the middle of a lecture and say, hey, what's my grade? Or you don't post, what's my grade, on a discussion board for all the other students to see. So kind of go through your policies of how that works. Okay, so now we're down to number 6, course procedures. So this is kind of, you can line out, here's how I'm working my expectations. First off is your attendance policy. especially for your online courses. Do they just need to access the course, pop in and pop out, or do they need to do an assignment before you're going to count them present that first week? And maybe really, say your financial aid depends on you showing up and doing these assignments. And then being clear with your in-class. We gets to the end of the quarter and we don't have as many students showing up for every class that they should. How does that affect their grade? What's your suggestion? Of course, ideally they would be at every class all the time, but if you have special penalties for not showing up, that's a good thing to communicate. Next is your examination policy. If you're an online class, what exams are going to be in the testing center or proctored exams? Which ones are you going to be able to just take online? The same thing for an inline class. Are we taking all the tests during class time, or do we need to set up a time to go take a test at the testing center? Then what's your policy on retakes? If they have, a horrible, no good day, is that enough to be able to retake the test? Or if they have a medical emergency, if someone's died in the family, and then maybe explain what kind of notification you need ahead of time or before that test, before you're going to allow retakes. And maybe that'll slow down some of the excuses that you might get. Missing examination for an emergency. So we have a few faculty that have a very detailed list of this counts as an emergency and this does not count as an emergency. So maybe you'd like to add that information. Do you routinely drop any grades, like a lowest quiz score? Do you grade on a curve? Is this something you may decide to do at the end of the course? So maybe being clear about what your grading policy is there. So next is the assignment policies. Where can they find the due dates? Are those hard due dates? Do you allow any late work? How will they submit the assignments? So we had a good discussion. Some professors take everything by email. So even if you have a Canvas shell, they want you to email them the work. And others, if you email them the work, they're like, go put that in Canvas. I don't want it in my email. I don't want to have to transfer it over. So be clear about how to submit assignments. Even if you're in an in-person class, if you want them to submit it online, will you still accept a paper copy in class? And this may be if you want to use a plagiarism checker, you're going to need an electronic copy of that assignment. So maybe even in an in-person class, you still want it submitted. What file types do you accept? Do you have to use Microsoft Word, or is it okay to use Google Docs, or can you use OpenOffice? Some of our office administration, you might have to use the program that you're actually learning on, where other things that might not matter as much. Being clear with them that they do have Office 365 available to them free as a student. So I've had students get, a couple weeks into the course and I'm like, why haven't you submitted this? Oh, I don't have word processing software on my new laptop. And you're like, well, there's a lot of other options out there to get that. Late policy. So do you accept late work? Do you take a percentage off? Is it only in certain conditions? Do you give partial credit if they turn things in late? And what counts as a legitimate excuse? And how do you want to receive those excuses? Do they need to be emailed to you? Do they need to call you on the phone? Do they need to come to class and explain? Then drop, withdraw, incomplete. We suggest including the dates from the academic calendar on there so students are aware, okay, this is my last date for a refund. This is the last date to drop. This is the last day for withdrawal. And we had a discussion that you may want to explain what withdrawing means. Some students, this is their first time in college and may not understand how a whole bunch of W's on their transcripts may affect their future results. And what's your policy on issuing an incomplete? So being clear what the college policy is and then what your expectations are. So next up, lots of talking for me. Interaction with an instructor. So calls, what are your preferred communication methods? So one of the faculty said, only during office hours am I in my office, and then I usually have a student in there with me, so I'm not going to be answering the phone. So the chance that you're going to connect with me on the phone is not great, so you probably better email. And then others were like, I don't want the email because it takes me twice as long to answer. Just call me and we'll talk about it. So, be real clear with your students. This is how I prefer you to contact me. How quick of a response? If they call you Friday afternoon, when are they going to hear from you again? If it's Thanksgiving break, are they going to be able to contact you during that time, or spring break? Should they leave a message? My answer is always yes. If you don't leave a message, I'm not calling you back. What information should they include in that message? If you're teaching a lot of classes, it might be nice to know what class the student is in, and at least leave their name in the message, so being a little clearer. Do you text? Can they text you? And this is where Google Voice, once again, a prompt for that free program, is that they would be able to text you, and you could have control of that without them having your cell phone number, which most of us are not willing to give out. Email. Do you prefer email? Do you want them to email you on their TVCC account or in Canvas? If you're an online course, having them do it through Canvas gives us that nice regular and substantive interaction that we're looking for. Can they email you from their Hotmail or Gmail account? So just real clear on what kind of email you prefer. How quick of a response? And what should they include in that email? So once again, I need to know your name and what class you're in, and then be real clear about the assignment that you're talking about. Your office hours. So what's the hours and locations of your office hours? If you're an adjunct, maybe offering, I can meet with you. If you set up an appointment, we can meet in the Barber Hall or in the Science Center, but being clear that they still have access to you. Are you always there at your office hours, or should they contact you ahead of time? Those of you that help with a lot of other things and have lots of meetings and maybe different things that you're in charge of, you might not always make it to your office hours. Do you offer virtual office hours? So Zoom, the software I'm using to record this video, can be used for virtual office hours. It's pretty handy. Sometimes you don't get a lot of students showing up, but it's nice to have it on in the background for that hour that you're in your office. And there's a little doorbell system, so if someone steps into the software, it gives a little ding dong, and they're there and be able to talk to them. So it doesn't cost you a lot of time to open up a virtual office hour. Regular and substantive interactions. So that's kind of the new thing we're a little bit concerned about. Federal government does audits on this. It's actually related to financial aid. So in an online course, you need teacher-initiated interaction once per week. And if you're not getting that interaction, the federal government considers that a correspondence course, and they don't offer financial aid for correspondence courses. So it could affect our ability to give out financial aid for our students. So some of the things that count, an announcement that has any course content in it. If you're just doing a housekeeping announcement, turn this in, don't turn that in, here's what we're doing, I'm going to be gone Wednesday, that doesn't count. But if you're putting some sort of content in there, that counts as regular and substantive interaction. If you're in your discussion boards discussing with students, that counts. If you're leaving substantive feedback, so if you copy and paste, great job, to everyone down the list, that's not really substantive feedback. But if you're giving, advice, even if you are doing some copy and pasting, I know you get a lab report or a computer assignment where it's really hard to explain that same thing over and over again. But just that they have a teacher, there's a teacher presence in that class is really what they're looking for. And we have a form, it's available on Canvas Commons, and it's basically week 1, here's what I did to interact with students. Week 2, here's what I did to interact with students. And that doesn't have to be kept up to date each week, but if you'll fill it out, our hopes is if we do get audited, which we're afraid may be coming this summer, that the auditors can go to that form and know exactly where to look for your feedback, or it's a real quick check for them, and it's like, oh good, this class meets, and they're not digging through your class trying to find evidence. Okay, technology requirements. So if you're doing online classes, regular access to the internet, so trying to do an online class where you only have library access in some of our small towns is going to be kind of tough. Are you going to need high-speed internet? So even me out in Nissa, we just switched internet providers, but even on DSL, I wasn't able to stream video, and I wasn't able to do some things that would be really useful to do in an online class. So I think being upfront about the requirements for that. Are they going to need a headset, microphone, speakers, any sort of accessories? What software are you going to be using? Word processing, spreadsheets, Excel. Does it have to be Microsoft? Can they use OpenOffice, Google Docs? Is there other software that they're going to have access to? This also comes into if they're using a shared computer that they don't have admin rights on, they may need to think ahead about what programs need to be loaded so they're available for your class. Technology support, it's always good to put a good paragraph in there of the IT contact information, when they're open, how to contact them. Canvas has the blue bar on the side with a big question mark. That's Canvas help. They can hit that at any time. A lot of students don't know that exists. And if they're using an IT issue as an excuse, do you require a ticket number, which I think is kind of genius because you're like, oh, I tried to turn my paper in and it wouldn't turn in, it just wouldn't submit. So here it is 3 days later. Well, did they actually try to get help from IT or Canvas to fix that issue? Talking about student resources that are useful to the students. So math lab, writing lab, link to some college services, library information. Even if it's that just pointing them to the website page that explains what those are for an online class or mentioning them in your live class. It's amazing how many students get through, a writing class and like, oh, there's been a writing lab. College policies and procedures. So these are a copy and paste. I've actually included an electronic copy in the files that I've attached when I sent this email video out. So you can grab those. The old ones that are on the forms and documents, and maybe the ones from your previous years, a lot of those links broke when they changed the website. So you'll want to grab this fresh copy of all those policies just to be sure that all the links are working in there. And we've reached the end of the list and didn't take too much time. If you have any questions about any of this material or would like some advice or help, I'm here at any time. You can email me. I'm youngmk@tvcc.cc, and my phone number, I have that listed over here somewhere, 541-881-5847 if you need to give me a call. Best of luck in your new quarter, and hopefully this helps you out. Thanks.